Hey everybody, this is Scotty at Sketchy's Garage. We're back. Our epoxy primer is flashed off. I'm gonna give you guys 2 cents worth of advice. As you can see, anywhere we put filler, you can see it. Whenever you go to put your fill primer on it, a lot of people have the tendency just to grab the gun and prime the whole panel. The problem you run into is this spot right here. This spot right here is more porous than this spot right here. So if we run 3 coats of primer across here, let it cure out, this spot right here has now become a low spot because it's sucked more primer in. So when you go to do your blocking, you're going to wonder, why is this spot lower? That's why. So now you're going to have to bring this panel right here that much more down to bring it level. So what we do is we just go ahead and run a couple coats on any of our filler work and then prime the whole panel. You ready to do this, Joe?
Hang on.
Alright, Joe. What kind of gun are you using today for the fill primer?
Oh, we got a new Tagna by the Velvet. Guys, let me tell you can buy 3 guns set up, and they are nice. They will bust this paint up and make it look right for you.
You know what size fluid tip that has?
I'm thinking we got the 1.8 in this.
That's got a 1.6. 1.6.
1.6. I thought we were splitting hairs on it. I wasn't for sure.
Yes, sir. About how much air pressure you figure you're going to run through it?
Probably 20 to 25 pounds at the most. You get anything over that on a high volume, low pressure gun, you're just defeating what you're supposed to be doing.
Yes, sir. You knock the efficiency of the gun way down. As you can tell, he's wearing his respirator. You guys out there, anytime you're spraying anything, make sure you wear your respirator. You only get 1 set of lungs. He's just gonna put 1 coat over the filler right now. Basically any area we put Bondo at, we're gonna throw a coat of primer on it. Spot right there. And the reason why we go with a different color epoxy versus our fill primer is just so we know. A lot of people use gray epoxy primer. The problem I usually find with it works good, but it's too close to the color of the metal. So by the time you burn through to the epoxy, you're already usually down to the metal, and you don't really want that. You want to have a nice uniform epoxy sealer under the whole job. It'll save you tons and tons of headaches. We're gonna go ahead and let this flash off, and we'll be back in about 15 minutes. All right, everybody, we're back. We're fixing to apply our first full coat over the whole panel. Before we did that, we went ahead and tack ragged the rest of the panel off. That way we pull off any dry spray we might have had from the primer. Joe's over there. It looks like he's set the jet. Eager beaver.
Yes, sir. Ready to do this?
You ready to do it?
Let's get this done. How's it looking, boss?
Looks good.
Smooth as silk, ain't it?
Yes, sir.
You tell them they could either spray some guide coat over it when they get done.
No, sir. We'll do that afterwards.
Alright.
What do you recommend for using this guide coat?
They make a spray or they make a powder. You can put the spray on it. You can put the spray on it while it's still wet and it'll stick real good to it. Or you can wait till you get ready to block it and put the powder on it.
Which one?
Either one of them's good.
Can you use rattle can spray paint?
No, sir, don't even go there.
Why not?
Don't test me today on that. Nope. No, rattle can ain't worth a dime. Got this dish looking good. I think we're running out of air, Bobby.
Alright guys, we're going to let this flash off and we'll be back for the final coat. Alright guys, we're back. We're fixing to put the last coat of primer on. So far it's looking pretty good for us. We probably got 2 spots that we'll have to address, but the rest of it looking pretty smooth. Like I say, it's real important whenever the fender's wet to take a good look at it, because that's when it'll stick out like a sore thumb. When it flashes off and just got a little bit of sheen, most of the time it's hard to pick up on that stuff, but when it's wet, it'll stick out on you. I'll show you in a second the spot that we found when Joe runs across the top of that fender. I don't know if the camera picks it up or not, but right there in that front leading edge, there's a little wibble wabble. We'll block it out. We might have to put some more filler in it, or it might be good. Whenever you're spraying the primer and you're still pretty green, be a good time to start spraying with your non-dominant hand. It doesn't hurt to get the practice up and get used to spraying with both arms, because if you get into a real big paint job, it's going to be real hard to do it all with one arm. You're going to have to switch back and forth. So that'd be a good time to practice, to get used to spraying with both hands. And there's also a lot of times you'll get in a spot and it's going to be hard for you to spray with your dominant hand. Show you the other spot we ran across, we seen earlier. front corner up there. You can maybe see it, maybe not. It's got just a little bit of a low spot right in here. But we'll take care of that when we block it out. This primer, it's laying down pretty good for us. And it's a pretty clean primer.
The main thing in priming is try to be consistent. Don't zigzag around this and that. The primer's got a tendency to build up where you start and stop at. So I've got it used to trying to prime something the way I want it to look when I paint it.
Yes, sir.
And that's a good idea to get used to right off the bat. It gets you out of a bunch of bad habits.
Yes, sir.
I'm running a little low. I'm going to grab some more primer.
Speaking of primers, there's a lot of primers out there that are 2K primers. And a lot of people assume that a 2K primer can be applied directly to bare metal. That's not the case. There is a couple that can be. You just want to make sure you really read the data sheet on it. I've seen a YouTuber, he's been using this stuff forever, applying it directly to bare metal, and the manufacturer recommends to use an etching primer or epoxy primer. So just make sure you read your tech sheet on your material that you're using.
Anytime, like Scotty said, anytime you grab a primer off the shelf and think it's good enough, put epoxy down first or an etching prime. Because if you don't, it will not stick.
Yep. I prefer an epoxy primer because it seals also. If you run into the case where you start body work on something and you got to stop for whatever reason, that epoxy primer will keep it sealed up as long as you top coat it with a primer or a paint for a couple years, and you can get back into it and won't have no problem. If you use like a DTM primer, which is a direct to metal primer, that primer is still porous, so if you happen to have to stop working on it for a year or so, it could actually start rusting up underneath the primer and give you problems. So we always just use epoxy. It'll save you a lot of headaches, and like say epoxy, it seals it. I'll show you a piece that we just painted over just straight rust, just to see how long it would keep the rust buried down. I think this piece is 2 years old, and all it was a door that we cut the backside out of something, wire wheeled it off and epoxied it. And like I say, I'll show you that in a second.
Another thing, guys, when you're doing stuff like this, if you ain't got time to do it, don't do it right then. Wait till you do have the time. Don't try to rush nothing. Make sure you're consistent with everything you do, and it will be the best result in the end.
Alright, I'm going to show you guys this piece real quick. This is the back side of a door that I cut out and did a patch panel on. I've just applied some epoxy primer over it. It's been about 2 years ago, and as you can see, there's still no rust bleed through or nothing. I was just kind of wondering how well it sealed it up. So that's a pretty good indicator that epoxy seals her up pretty good for you. Here's another hit for you. Primers are very expensive, so it's a sin to throw any of it away. I know a lot of people that throw a quarter cup, half cup of primer away, and it just drives me crazy. Like I say, just go back over your fill areas. Anywhere you put filler or any area that you're concerned with, it's not going to hurt to have an extra coat of primer on there.
And if If you are running short on a little bit of it, it don't matter. Just finish where you finish. It'll still be fine.
Yeah, one thing is, do not over reduce your primer. If you over reduce your primer, it's going to end up flaking off. It's not really designed to be reduced heavily, and it changes the properties in the paint and the way that it sticks. So learn from me, don't over reduce your primer. Usually if you reduce it any more than 10-15% is about the max you want to do.
Alright, where's that, folks?
Pretty much.
Yes, sir. Loving it.
Alrighty, guys. And that's how you apply 2K primer. If you've got any questions, let us know in the comments below. Thank you so